how God makes a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I'm the sow's ear in question, and his plan is to make a silk purse out of me. His plan is to make me like Jesus. Last week we looked at the fact that all of us were created in God's image. That's how he describes it. He says, let us make man and woman in our image. And he made us, and he was pleased with what he made. He was glad that he made you. He was glad that he made me. But what I've done through my life, and we've all done the same, we've tried to think, I could improve. I could do better than God. I could do some things my way, and they'd be far better than the way God tells me to do them. And every time we do that, it's like we cover up a bit of his image in us. And then when we decide that we're going to let God have his way, we're going to live as he wants us to live, we're going to fulfill the potential that is ours in our life, and do what we were designed to do. At that point, God starts to cut away and chip away at the things where we've covered his image up, so that he can restore us to his image, to make us like Jesus. And I said there are 3 tools that we're going to look at in this series. 3 instruments that God uses to make you the person he wants you to be. And last week we looked at the fact that he uses people. He starts off with our parents, who restrain us from doing the things that we shouldn't do, and restrain us from covering up the image of God as much as we can. And when we're teenagers, we object and say, I don't like my mum because she's always telling me off. But when we grow up, we realise that she was being God's instrument to stop us becoming as bad as we might have been. And then we've got brothers and sisters, and they're there to show us that we can't just get away with everything we think we can get away with. There's the church, where we have a community of supportive people who are there to encourage us to fulfill our potential and to work with us to achieve God's purpose. And we also said that sometimes in our lives we come across those difficult people, those people who are hard to deal with, and we don't know what to do with them. And they always annoy us. And the most annoying thing about them is nobody else can see that they're not as nice as they should be. But God uses those people to change us and make us like Jesus. And he expects us to treat them as Jesus would treat them. And most surprisingly, he expects us to treat them as if they were Jesus. How would you treat Jesus in this situation? That's how you have to treat them. And that's a tough one. But God uses these people to make us like him. Some are examples for us to follow, some are examples for us to avoid. But the people who come into our lives are the tools that God uses to make us like Jesus. This week, we're going to look at events. The second tool which God uses most in people's lives, after people, he uses events. Things that happen to us, experiences we have. This week I was watching the local news, and John Mitchell, the weatherman, was doing one of those reports that he does when he goes out and about. And he was walking with his friend up to the top of Mount Tor, a beautiful hill. In this country we call it a mountain because it's about 1,000 feet high, and to us that's a mountain. To most people in the world that's just a hill. But he was going up it. And as he got to the top, his commentary went something like this. The top of Mount Tor has been a place of worship for over 3,000 years. And when you get here, and the camera began to pan around the scenery, when you get here, you can see why. And we've all had those experiences where something has made us want to spontaneously worship. 3,000 years ago, at the top of Mount Tor, people said, wow, God is good and great. And they begin to worship there, just spontaneously. I remember going up a mountain in Italy, northern Italy. We were staying in a beautiful little guest house up this mountain, and outside the guest house was a cable car, and that took you halfway up, and then when you got further up, there was another cable car, and that took you further up, and then you were pretty nearly at the top. And it wasn't very hard to get to the very top. And I remember walking up there and seeing this little building that somebody had put there, and I thought, why on earth has somebody built something right up here? Nobody can have lived here when that was built. They've just built this little hut, and as I got closer I realised it was a little chapel. And they'd built a place of worship on the top of this mountain. And I looked at the view, and it was awesome. And my heart just wanted to cry out, oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the works thy hand hath made, how great thou art. I just couldn't stop myself. And we have those moments. Sometimes when we go to the East Coast and we see the waves crashing against the sea wall, we're in awe of what God has made. Something comes over us and we just say, God, you're great. Sometimes we look up on a cold winter's night when the air's clear and it's crisp and you see the stars and you begin to count them and you get lost in the distance and wonder of it. And then you realise that's just a tiny thing. And here I am. Who am I? And God is present. And you're overwhelmed. Sometimes you have that experience when you see a child, a baby born, a new baby. You hold it in your arms. You look at its tiny little face and its tiny wrinkled fingers, and you're overwhelmed at God's presence and the wonder of this miracle that's happened. And you cannot help but worship. And God uses these experiences to make us not just in awe of Him, but to make us like Him. And we begin to express the image of God in us as we create, as we make music and art and sculpture, as we create stories and tell of wonderful things. The image of God is restored in us, and we become more the person that He wants us to be, more like Jesus, with more compassion for the lonely and the lost and the sick and the homeless and the poor. He fills us with that compassion out of these wonderful experiences, because we say, I'm so fortunate, and must respond with compassion to those in need. But also, as well as these awesome events, there are some awful events. And they happen in our lives. Somebody's walking along the road and a car crashes into them. And their legs are broken and the rest of their life they're limp. The rest of their life they're injured, they're damaged.